Wow, wow, wow. What a year it's been. Hello, everyone. I am Micha Green, Washington Informer Managing Editor, and I am so elated to have been a part of bringing you all the news that you can use in 2023. And the Washington Informer certainly was happy to cover all of the important information that you all needed this year, from the historic inauguration of Governor Wes Moore as the first Black governor of Maryland in January, all the way to December's historic election of Shamika Hayes, the first Black woman to serve as the Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner representing the people of the DC Department of Corrections. We covered so much happening in politics nationally as well as locally, from happenings at the White House to the Supreme Court, and all the way here at the Wilson Building and with the DC Council, as well as DC Mayor Muriel Bowser. We covered the Revised Criminal Code Act, emergency legislation for public safety. We covered the mayor's sweeping new policies regarding harassment and sexual harassment in the DC government. We were there for the announcement of the new commander's ownership, and we also covered the announcement that the Washington Wizards and Washington Capitals might head to Potomac Yard in Virginia. And we covered so much history this year. The 60th anniversary of the March on Washington, the groundbreaking of the Go-Go Museum, and the unveiling of Marion Barry Avenue, as well as Rolark Way, in honor of our founders, Calvin and Wilhelmina Rolark. And, we do not plan on slowing down in 2024. Next year, we are excited to really dive in to all that you need to know about election 2024. With next year being an election year, we are going to closely examine issues important to the community, particularly Black communities, not only locally, but nationally. We plan to ask politicians hard questions and demand answers. And we know that there's going to be so many people out there doing the good work to ensure that people are registered to vote and combating any sort of voter suppression. And so we're going to be out there covering those issues. We'll also be celebrating 60 years next year at the Washington Informer. So we are going to certainly be having special events and special coverage surrounding our 60th anniversary. And as we commemorate 6 decades of bringing you all news that you can use, we'll be doing the same thing we've been doing for 59 years and counting, which is following important stories, unveiling and revealing and breaking important stories for the community. And with that said, we just absolutely wish you an amazing holiday season, a wonderful end to your 2023, and an awesome kickoff to 2024. Blessings to you all.
My name is Richard Elliott. I'm the Washington Informer's writer covering Prince George's County. Some of the major stories and topics that we covered this year with the Informer in Prince George's County have been some of the ongoings with the county council, some of the first things that the newly elected Congressman Glenn Ivey has been doing, a lot of updates regarding development and real estate and businesses. I think some of the most important stories that we were able to cover this year were the unfortunate passing of Tommy Broadwater, and particularly all of the coverage we have done of Maryland's first African-American governor, Mr. Wes Moore. So some of the significant trends or themes that we observed: people are always interested in us having the first scoop on business openings, on business closings, on business alterations. Many times there is not a good way of people in the community knowing about them. So there's been some Facebook groups, particularly Greg's real estate group, where we've been able to find stories and plug stories and make sure that people know what's going on in their backyard. Looking ahead to next year, what are some of the things we want to cover? There's a newly elected council chair, Jolene Ivy, and vice chair, Sydney Harrison, and they are going to be dealing with some serious budgetary issues this upcoming year. So to try and figure out how they plan to fill in the budget shortfall, how they plan to attract new businesses to the area, that's going to be a very good overlap between business and politics that we will get to cover. So some stuff that we think that we need to look more into this upcoming year. I think that stories in some of the more underrepresented areas of the county, rather than topics, areas deep in South County and in the Port Towns corridor, I definitely think there's more local news that we can do this year. Uh, Fortunately, those two areas are also going to be represented by new representation on the county council, who I think are going to plug us through their emails and through their direct contact to let us know what's going on in those areas. And what impact do I hope that I can do this upcoming year? I hope that I can make sure people know not just what's going on with their local governments, what's going on with their local businesses, but make sure that they know that there's not only negative news happening. There are many positive things that are happening in our county, and there's a lot of interconnectivity between our county, between DC, between Northern Virginia. And I am hopeful that with our coverage, we can help to continue the fight to keep some of our sports teams in this area instead of moving into Virginia. So that's again, I'm Richard Elliott with the Washington Informer, giving you this year in review, along with this year in preview, signing off. Thank you very much.
I'm Stacy Brown, the senior writer for the Washington Informer, covering national news and politics mostly, and going to summarize the major stories for 2023. This year, the criminal trials, of course, of the twice impeached former President Donald Trump dominated our coverage. The proceedings shed light on allegations of corruption and abuse of power, creating a political storm. We went into the legal intricacies this year, the political ramifications, and the public reactions, of course, which we did to provide our audience with comprehensive insights as to what is taking place, not just in the White House, not just in the Capitol, but in the courthouse, as this case with a former president is unprecedented. Additionally, the heightened tension in the U.S. House of Representatives, Congress. We covered that extensively, with Republicans adopting a hostile environment, and that became a recurring theme this year. The adversarial atmosphere contributed to a charged political climate that demanded constant scrutiny that only the Washington Informer could bring. We have to give it to you through the lens of the Black press. So what were some of the significant trends or themes? Well, throughout 2023, a notable trend was the polarized political landscape. You can't get away from that, right? The trials that amplified existing divisions with public opinion on Trump's culpability sharply divided along partisan lines, of course. Another prominent theme was the erosion of democratic norms and folks worrying, even to this minute, about the future of American democracy. Trump's trials, of course, raised questions about the accountability of politics, those in politics, political leaders, and the resilience of democratic institutions. And we even see now, as we this moment await the Supreme Court to weigh in on whether they are going to remove obstruction charges against Trump, whether they are going to agree with the former president that he has presidential immunity or that his alleged crimes was committed while he was in office. Many people forget that the 2021 January 6th insurrection, well, he was still in office. He still had another week or so to go. But scholars and those who follow the law, legal experts say, doesn't have presidential immunity. Well, that's what they say. We'll see what the Supreme Court says. He also is arguing that It's double jeopardy because, of course, we mentioned him being twice impeached. Well, he says that the Senate acquitted him in each of those impeachment trials, which means that these trials that he faced are double jeopardy, amount to double jeopardy. Trump is facing 4 criminal trials, 91 felony counts, I should say, that he's facing. And here's the thing: if he's convicted on all 91 of those charges, the sentence is better than 800 years in prison. Trump also in 2023 was found by a civil jury to be responsible for sexually assaulting a writer, E. Jean Carroll, in which they ordered him to pay $5 million. And in that trial, the appellate courts ruled that he did not have presidential immunity. His business has been found by a judge in New York, Trump's business, to have committed massive business fraud. And a jury is going to consider whether they are going to award the state of New York, at the direction of Attorney General Letitia James, $250 million in damages from Trump's organization, which could decimate the Trump organization. But the judge is also going to determine whether or not Trump can do business in the state of New York again. Well, so some of the most impactful stories in 2023, the most impactful stories revolved around the core issues affecting the nation: the integrity of its leaders and the strength of its democratic foundation. Covering the trials of Donald Trump allowed us to address fundamental questions about justice, accountability, and the rule of law. These stories resonated deeply with our audience, fostering a critical dialogue about the future of American democracy. So what's the projections for 2024? Well, looking ahead to 2024, the political landscape remains uncertain. Anticipating continued turbulence, we expect stories surrounding electoral dynamics, potential policy shifts, and the evolving role of political parties to be of paramount importance with the 2024 presidential election looming ever large. It's going to start in January, actually, where, again, we are facing another deadline for a government shutdown. And the new House Speaker, Mike Johnson of Louisiana, well, will he cave to Democrats and really his constituents and do a deal? Same type of situation that found his predecessor in that position, McCarthy, found him ousted from that position of the Speaker of the House. So it's a lot going on there, a lot of nuances, but we also plan to explore issues beyond the mainstream narrative. We want to ensure a nuanced understanding of the challenges and the opportunities that lie ahead in 2024. And finally, so think about some of the overlooked stories of 2023. As we've been talking about, our coverage addressed the major political events. We acknowledge the need to amplify voices and stories that may have been overshadowed. Communities facing systemic challenges, social justice issues, and local perspectives often deserve more attention, and they certainly should get more attention. So in the coming year, we aim to dedicate resources to uncovering these stories and ensuring a more inclusive and representative narrative. And finally, I said finally already, right? But finally, what's the impact on 2024? In 2024, our goal is to foster informed and engaged citizenship. We aspire to continue providing our audience with unbiased, in-depth reporting that transcends partisan divides. We want to highlight underrepresented stories, promote civic discourse, and hold leaders accountable. We hope to contribute to a more robust and participatory democracy. Our commitment is to empower our audience with knowledge that sparks positive societal change. And that is the mission for us all.
Hello, this is James Wright, the business reporter for the Washington Informer newspaper. 2023 was a very eventful year for business. There were intersections in terms of health, intersections in terms of politics, and intersections in terms of local government and community affairs. And the biggest story that I reported on this year had to be the opening of the Sycamore and Oak Retail Village in June. This is a village that's located on the campus of the developing St. Elizabeth's campus in Ward 8. And this development has 13 local Black businesses. And there's really nothing like it in the country in terms of its setup and structure. As a matter of fact, Vice President Kamala Harris visited the facility sometime this year, and that was a major show. And this is what I'm going to be focusing on as we go through the new year in 2024, trying to get local businesses, small businesses, not just in the district, but also in Prince George's County, to highlight the contributions that they're making in terms of hiring people, creating new products, and really creating new vibes. In addition, I'm going to explore how this new animal called artificial intelligence and how that is going to impact small businesses and minority businesses. And of course, we have got to continue to keep the feet to the fire of our government officials in making sure that small, minority, and female-owned businesses get their fair share of the government contracting pie. Even though we have had some judicial rulings that have somewhat moved it against these government contract set-asides, that's what they call them, set-aside programs, we still have to be very persistent in making sure that minority businesses and female-owned businesses and small businesses have a chance to participate in these large government contracts. And speaking of that, when you have the big, huge developments that are being planned, such as the Potomac Yard moving the Wizards and the Caps to Virginia from DC, we will cover it from a business aspect in terms of what are minority businesses going to get out of that and other similar type of developments as the Washington, D.C. area continues to boom. My biggest impact is that I hope that to have someone decide to become an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur is not easy. It takes a lot of hours, takes you away from your family. But the thing is that it is the dynamic of our American economy. And we as Black people, in terms of building wealth, need to own businesses in order to do that as one of the components, I should say, of owning businesses. So that is what I'm going to focus on. And in terms of 2024, I'm very excited about the year. There's so much going on in the Washington area, and there's going to be more going on, and I just feel it in my bones. And because it'll be an election year, there will be a laser-like focus on economic development and economics just purely as it is. So please look for my coverage and my unique coverage in terms of Black businesses, small businesses, female businesses in the Washington area as we continue to try to make an impact.
Hi there, I'm Brenda Seiler. I'm a lifestyle reporter with the Washington Informer. I'm happy to talk to you about some of the things that we covered in the lifestyle section this year. First of all, we were loaded this year with absolutely wonderful art that captures the African American community throughout history, throughout the world. And I guess we have to say that the biggest thing just happened here in December, and that's the unveiling of the portrait of Oprah Winfrey in the National Gallery of Art. What a wonderful opportunity for us to honor someone who has meant so much to all areas of media. That was wonderful. We also saw this year an exhibit put out by the Portrait Gallery that has to do with Frederick Douglass. There is so much about Frederick Douglass that we don't know and that this exhibition told us about. And so that was also wonderful. I want to commend the Phillips collection up above DuPont Circle for a number of things that they did this year. They looked at the work of photographer Frank Stewart. It was called Nexus, an American Photographer's Journey, 1960s through the present. I don't know if people understand the impact Frank's photography has had, especially capturing some of the work that music artists are doing. And the Phillips collection has an exhibit right now that's going to close in early January called African Modernism in America, spanning 1947 to 1967. That's a meeting of the talents and the minds of artists from the continent of Africa and here in the United States. One of the things that I love in terms of music is jazz. I write about it a lot. I have a chance to cover a number of jazz artists. And one of the things that has just been a godsend to us in the DC area is the DC Jazz Fest. What a concert schedule they had for us this year. The main event runs over Labor Day weekend, but DC Jazz Fest is a year-round event. So just don't think of it about Labor Day. Get on their mail list so you know whenever they're bringing artists into town all the time. Also, I must commend the Kennedy Center and their National Symphony Pops Orchestra. Always innovative. They did a group of concerts that were so wildly received. They looked at the anniversary of Marvin Gaye's What's Going On and brought in so many wonderful vocalists to interpret that album. They also did a 4-day sold out show with Maxwell. And also they brought in artists that sang the music to the award-winning musical Rent. A part of that cast for Rent was Miles Frost from the DC area. He went to high school in Silver Spring and he's been enrolled as a student at Bowie State University. And you remember he won the Tony Award last year for MJ, the Michael Jackson story. He's a very talented person and he gave us an interview. So he is moving and grooving and we want to wish him the best. There was a trend that I saw in theater where a lot of our theater companies were reinterpreting Shakespeare. And what a joy that was. It was in contemporary language in some instances, and definitely in contemporary times and in contemporary dress. So I want to commend the Roundhouse Theater for putting on The Tempest, Fat Ham, and interpretation of Hamlet, still going on at Studio Theater, and also A Winter's Tale, one of the last plays written by Shakespeare that was presented in the newly renovated Shakespeare Theater up a little bit past Capitol Hill. In terms of some of the most important and impactful stories when it comes to lifestyle, I must say the naming of Hannah Sharif as the artistic director at Arena Stage, one of our oldest theaters in the area, was wonderful. She will be putting on and putting together her season, which will be the 2024 to 2025 season. And she will announce her season in February of 2024. So we look forward to seeing what she's going to bring to the DC area. When I think about 2024, one of the things that I'm looking forward to is the documentary about Luther Vandross. That is being produced and directed by Dawn Porter. She was the mind and the creative talent behind the documentaries about Vernon Jordan and John Lewis. So everyone is excited to see what she is going to do with the life of Luther Vandross. And I look forward to us doing some coverage of the lifestyle section that will complement the fact that the Washington Informer is turning 60 years old. That means lifestyle will be grand because the Washington Informer will forever be grand. Thank you and happy 2024.
Hi, my name is Austin Cooper, and I am the managing editor of the Our House DC newsletter for the Washington Informer. I've had the honor, the pleasure of being the managing editor for a little more than 2 years, actually 2.5 years. Our stories during 2023 covered a wide range of issues, everything from Mayor Muriel Bowser's Black Homeownership Fund, is it making a difference, to how to keep seniors safe in their homes, Black appraisers needed to combat racial bias. When it rains, it pours. Understanding your home flood insurance risk before the next storm hits. The DC Mayor Strike Force, did it make a difference? The air inside the house, the connection between our homes and asthma. 9 ways to prepare that we can prepare as individuals or as families for home ownership, and what will be the impact of interest rates in 2024 on those of you thinking of purchasing a home. Look, I think that in 2023, each of our stories was impactful, but one story in particular was impactful, and that is as we have continued to tell the story of our readers, of our citizens who lived on Talbot Street in Southeast. 5-6 years ago, they purchased a home through the mayor's first-time homeownership program, and through no fault of their own, over 50 residents have had to vacate those premises. These again are first-time homeowners. They've had to vacate because of faulty structural infrastructure. So some of them are indeed homeless. The city has been assisting them for rent in other locations. That is going to come to an end. One of our stories in 2024 is going to be with Jerusalem Belay. She is a single woman in her mid 30s. And like some of the others, she is homeless. She has decided to take a break, take a sabbatical, and has been invited home to Kenya to regroup. And then she is really making a personal decision on whether she wants to come back to the Washington, D.C. area. Again, each of these homeowners who lost their condos through, again, no fault of their own, are still responsible for paying the mortgages on their condos as well as condo fees. So what we try to do with these stories is to make them interesting. We want them to be informative, but in particular, what we try and do is to make them personal. We want everyone to be able to relate, to see themselves, or to perhaps to identify someone in their family, friends, or loved ones who can specifically benefit from these stories. In terms of the themes and trends of 2023 and going into 2024, we expect here at the Our House DC newsletter to continue to tell the stories of the challenges for individual homeowners, for families. So the themes are consistent. Folks want to know what is the property tax process? Even though you're a homeowner, the property tax process can indeed be challenging and for some even confusing. So we want to tell those types of stories. In terms of 2024, what stories that we would hope to cover? Some of the stories that we're going to cover is why homeownership is so important. Is homeownership worth it financially, and why? And how young people define generational wealth versus older Americans. One of the things that we want to continue doing in 2024, so if you read our newsletter, there is a section that where we ask you, our readers, to define, what you like about the stories, what you don't like about the stories that you're reading. But we also give you the opportunity to state what stories we are not covering. What stories would you like us to cover? So certainly in 2024, we're going to do an even better job of taking your ideas and writing stories about them.
Hello, I'm Raja Kelly. I'm a member of the Washington Informer digital team and also a contributing writer. 2023 was a very dynamic year. I wrote about a variety of topics, but some things that stand out for me was my coverage of Georgetown and their Hoyas for Slavery Accountability, or HASA group, and their libation ceremony where they honored the over 200 enslaved persons that were sold in order to support Georgetown University at that time. I didn't realize that Georgetown that owned so many slaves, or that that was the largest known slave sale by a still existing university in the United States. So lots of information there, and really interesting to learn about the descendants and the descendant community that's grown from the research that Georgetown and the students and the staff have done there. Also wrote about the Go-Go Museum, which I think is going to be really important to DC in terms of fostering that DC native culture and area cultural representation, with go-go being now the official music form of DC, but at one time really hated by the police and residents, depending on the generation. And now it's something that we're looking back and celebrating and honoring the musicians and the promoters and all the people who are part of that community and that culture. And I think when the museum opens, hopefully in 2024, it'll be really dynamic and a great way to draw people to Anacostia and also learn about that history. Another really interesting story, and unfortunately one I didn't expect to write, but was the passing of Dr. Sandra Butler Truesdale, who's a activist and musical historian here in the DC area, and she worked, for decades, just chronicling the music and artist culture of DC, and she even worked, to her last days, hosting on WPFW, jazz and blues show, and still worked as an activist. Dr. Truesdale was a member of a group that I also covered this past year, the D&B Music Stakeholders. And when they were supporting artists and musicians during the pandemic, she was really integral to their efforts, and always supportive and active. So she will be missed. But as I mentioned, I do work on the digital team, and we've been making a lot of changes behind the scene that we're really excited about. One of kind of the biggest changes is the addition of our new calendar tool, City Spark. And that's something you can access just by going through the regular Washington Informer site and clicking the calendar link. But it's a tool that allows you to create a digital platform for your event with a calendar listing. Within that tool, we've given several options for the event producer or promoter to access some Washington Informer resources, such as our email list or our social media reach, and highlight and raise the profile of their event. So, that's something that we basically just begun to roll out and haven't even really debuted to the public. But I think it will make a really big impact in terms of how artists and event promoters and producers are sharing information about their events, and also what people are covering and what people are going to be interested in 2024, both here at the Washington Informer and citywide for the media. Some trends that I've noticed is that in the 59th year, it's just been great, from the awards we won in the media at NABJ, or, the individual recognitions that members of the staff, such as our publisher, Denise Rolark Barnes, winning an award from the DC Public Library Foundation, or Sam P.K. Collins being honored as one of the People of the Year by Washington City Paper. People are starting to recognize the value that the Washington Informer produces and holds for the community. And I look forward to 2024 having an elevated platform and continuing to deliver all the things that people have come to love and appreciate about the Informer, from the great reporting to the community activism and all the things we do in terms of the community support. So looking forward to 2024 and knowing it's going to be the best year ever, and also our 60th anniversary.
Hi, my name is Kayla Benjamin, and I cover climate and environmental justice for the Washington Informer. This has been my first full year with the newspaper, and I got to cover a small part of how a very global crisis, namely the climate crisis, has unfolded here in DC. So when we burn carbon and other greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuels, it traps heat in our planet. And over the last 12 months, we have had the hottest year scientists have ever recorded since we started making these measurements. And here in DC, what that's meant is we had an incredibly record-breaking heat wave in September. We had more flooding from intense rainfall. And if you remember in June, we had wildfire smoke days from a unprecedented wildfire season in Canada. And all of those events are the kinds of things we're potentially likely to see more often and more intensely as the climate crisis gets worse, which is a really, really hard thing to think about. But over the last year, I also got to cover some incredible ways that people, organizations, institutions are working to solve these crises in their own communities. And that's been an incredible pleasure to cover because it's really, really hopeful, especially when I see small communities, small neighborhoods coming together to fight environmental injustices. So, for example, Ivy City and other Ward 5 neighborhood injustices. That's what I meant. So, Ivy City and other Ward 5 neighborhood deal with much higher levels of air pollution from industrial sites, while other parts of the city, mostly whiter and richer parts of the city, don't deal with the same types of pollution. And community organizations have been doing an incredible job organizing to address those problems. I've also really loved writing about solar panels and solar installations across the city and how DC has been supporting a green energy transition that does a lot of different positive things. So it's not just about cutting the carbon emissions that are slowly cooking us, but also providing jobs, helping people have access to cheaper energy and cleaner air, and really showing that how we can address the climate crisis while also supporting communities and not leaving people behind. So that's what I would really like to focus on next year, to keep writing about solutions into 2024. I'm interested in following a couple of bills before the DC Council. One of them is about replacing lead pipes, which has been a goal for a long time, ever since DC had the worst lead crisis in the country in 2004. And since then, the city has not done a particularly efficient job of replacing all of the city's lead pipes. And there has been legislation to speed up the process. So I'm interested in following where that goes. I'm also looking forward to seeing movement on an environmental justice bill that was introduced just last month, focused on how to make it harder for certain companies to operate polluting facilities in neighborhoods that already experience a lot of different kinds of pollution. And overall, it looks like it's going to be an interesting year. So I'm wishing everyone a happy holiday season, and come check back on Our Earth in January. Thanks so much.
Peace and blessings. This is Sam P.K. Collins, WI staff reporter, with beats primarily on the DC Council and Education beat. Throughout most of 2023, you could find me in the Wilson building, really getting a sense of the budget process and seeing what the DC Council members were talking about. And I did that all while also in the streets of DC, speaking to teachers, students, parents, and everybody else in between. So 2023 opened up with a lot of discussion around the revised Criminal Code Act, and that discussion went on for about half the year, even as we kept discussing the budget, or the council members rather. So crime, education, and city services really took a big brunt of the conversation this year. In terms of crime, there were questions about sentencing. There were also questions about whether criminal penalties were too harsh or too light. There were also questions around what to do about school resource officers, or how to increase, or whether to increase the police staffing at MPD. So a lot of legislation went into place with that. As you know, the Revised Criminal Code Act, it went to Congress, but Congress struck it down, which pretty much spoke to the federal government interference into DC, and really reignited or even made louder the calls for statehood. So we saw a lot of that this year. A lot of hearings that DC Council member Charles Allen, DC Council Chairman Phil Mendelson, Mayor Bowser, as well as Deputy Mayor Chief Lindsay Appia attended, just given, once again, the federal interference in DC affairs. And as it relates to the budget, a lot of competing issues. Speaking about the crime issue, in my reporting, you had people who were very concerned about stomping out crime, but you had others who saw crime as a symptom of a bigger problem, which what they might have described as the disinvestment from education, social services, food, and all of the above. So when it came to the budget season and well after, we kept seeing discussions about SNAP funding. We kept seeing discussions about ERAP, which is rental assistance. We kept seeing discussions about schools, especially, and about which schools are getting funded. And those discussions, as I said before, persisted because right now in December, we are in school registration season. The My School Lottery just opened up. And with that, we have parents in Ward 7 and 8, once again, trying to get a sense of where they're going, whether they're going to stay in Ward 7 or 8, or they're going to send their children across town to what they consider better schools. And once again, the funding issue has come up because schools are being underfunded east of the Anacostia River. And while council legislation has spoken to that, the DC Council as a whole has had a hard time holding DCPS accountable, or even bringing them to the table and having them follow legislation that asked them at one point to submit budget proposals well before deliberation. And DCPS has not been too transparent in that realm, much to the dissatisfaction of the DC Council, and particularly the teachers who are currently undergoing contract negotiations with DCPS. That was definitely another story, and one that is ongoing, considering that contract negotiations we're talking 4-5 years, 2 contract cycles in a row. And in the most recent in this current contract negotiation cycle, DCPS hasn't come to the table just yet, despite what they might have said. So we talked about education. We talked about crime. In the realm of social services and food security or insecurity, we had a couple of stories about that. Shout out to my colleague, Linda Way Villakazi. She and I wrote a couple stories about that when we're talking about grocery store closures, when we're talking about certain parts of the ward not getting stores that they were promised. And, most recently, with the extra SNAP funds, we're talking about almost 40 million not being allocated as was outlined in the budget. So for 2024, you will see that that showdown go down in the council between the mayor and the council. That seems to be a constant theme. The mayor and the DC council going at it time and time again. So in 2024, you'll be seeing that. You'll be seeing questions around truancy. You'll be seeing questions around the Department of Youth and Rehabilitation Services. You'll also be seeing continuous discussion about whether or not the DC Council and the mayor support a ceasefire in Gaza. They haven't really spoken to that. A few council members have, released statements. To my recollection, DC Council Member Robert White and DC Council Member Janice Lewis George have spoken outright in support of a ceasefire. But as speaking as a whole entity, the council and the mayor have not spoken to that. So there's definitely a lot on the horizon as it relates to council affairs, as it relates to education. Like I said before, we're looking at contract negotiations. The WTU is very, very adamant about having a contract finalized by February. But based on what I wrote, that's not looking very likely. And hopefully that will turn around, but we will see. And one more thing I do want to put on the table as it relates to 2024, we're looking at public safety. So There are a slew of bills under what's called the Secure DC Act that DC Council Member Brooke Pinto proposed earlier this year. We also have legislation that DC Mayor Bowser proposed this year in terms of anti-loitering laws, anti-masking laws, and even retail theft laws that will up penalties for criminal enterprises involved in that, where people plan around robbing stores downtown or wherever else in full and selling those products at a lower price. So there's a lot on the table in 2024 as it relates to public safety, as it relates to education, and as it relates to food insecurity and other issues. And like I said, let's not forget what's happening abroad. My name is Sam P.K. Collins. I'm a Washington Informer staff writer covering education in the D.C. Council and whatever else in between. Peace and blessings. Happy New Year. Happy holidays.
Hi, I'm Denise Rolark Barnes, publisher of the Washington Informer. Happy Kwanzaa, Happy New Year, and I hope that you had a very Merry Christmas. As I look back over 2023, this has been a tremendously wonderful year for the Washington Informer newspaper. I am so proud of the team of reporters, photographers, our office administration, our drivers, distributors, and actually the community at large for all the support that you have given this organization now in its 59th year, looking to turn 60 in 2024. We had some great achievements this year. Of course, we won several awards for the work that we do in the community. It's not so much all of the awards that we've received, which we're really honored and grateful for, but it's the way that we've been able to do what our editor, Micha Green, always describes as our fearless journalism and the impact that it's had on the community as we help to amplify the voices who are often unheard. We don't want to use the term the voiceless, because we all have a voice. It's just how we at the Washington Informer attempt to amplify those voices and to make sure that those voices are heard by the powers that be. So this was a good year for that. We looked at, done some extensive coverage on environmental justice in our community, things that impact our residents, as written by our dynamic reporter, Caleb Benjamin. We've tackled issues of education and also crime by our super dynamic reporter, Sam P.K. Collins. We've exploded with lifestyle coverage, thanks to our lifestyle reporter, Brenda Seiler, and also new to our staff, but not so new, Raja Kelly, who is giving us a wonderful calendar of events. And I could go on and on by some of the stories that we've done, focusing on home ownership. And it's our job not only to talk about the difficult things that our community is facing, but also to talk about how we are consistently a community that overcomes. And so that's our job that we think we did fairly well, actually pretty well in 2023. And we look forward to continuing in 2024. As we move into the new year, there's some areas that we really want to focus on. We want to make sure that we have a healthier community. And so you're going to see more coverage by the Washington Informer, particularly from our health writer, Linda Way Velakazi. We really want to see a difference. We want to see the needle move as it relates to the healthcare of adults, seniors, and our children. We're also going to do more coverage as it relates to housing, particularly the area of home ownership. We don't necessarily want to say financial literacy, I'm saying that, but also financial health. We want to do what we can to cover stories and to provide our readers with resources that will help them to be healthier physically, financially, and spiritually in 2024. So we will be celebrating our 60th anniversary on October the 16th, 2024. We give honor to our founder, Dr. Calvin W. Rolark, our publisher, who left us in 1994, but left us with a mission and a path in which we are continuing to walk to serve our readers in Washington, D.C., the surrounding suburbs and around the world. So continue to stay with us, continue to read us, continue to support us, continue to follow us, continue to like us, continue to talk to us as we will be out in the community talking to you. We look forward to growing our Washington Informer family in 2024, because when it's all said and done, we want you to know that we are the involved newspaper that wants to make a difference for everyone that reads us and that we serve. Until then, as we continue on, this is Denise Rolark Barnes saying God bless you. Have a wonderful new year, and we look forward to continuing to be your community newspaper.